Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Skull Session Recruiting Podcast brought to you by BuckeyeHuddle.com. I'm Marc Givler. I got Tony Gerdeman here with me. We are doing an emergency commitment episode of the Skull Session Podcast today. Ohio State has landed top 100 wide receiver Quincy Porter out of Bergen Catholic, a powerhouse program in North New Jersey. Not a stunner given how the visit went last week. I don't think we would have put Quincy Porter in this class 2 months ago, 6 weeks ago even, but we heard very good stuff coming out of the official visit last week. We weren't sure then what to expect moving forward as he still had a couple officials scheduled. Those are not happening, obviously, as he committed to Ohio State here on Friday afternoon. First of all, Tony, surprise level, kind of thoughts on timing here. I know, like I said, we were reporting really good stuff coming out of the visit this past weekend, but again, it was kind of a thing of like, okay, was this going to wear off, in a few days and go take some other visits and kind of get into that cycle, or was it really going to result in a commitment?
I don't know if we should ever be surprised when a wide receiver commits to Ohio State, but I am kind of surprised at the timing given that he was still had visits scheduled, and to commit the day that you're supposed to be on your way to Michigan or, on your way to another official visit. Like, I would have expected it, if it's going to happen a few days ago or before, this kind of a late hour. So yeah, I'm surprised at that, but I guess you can never be surprised when Brian Hartline gets a wide receiver. I do wonder, though, Mark, this is now their second New Jersey wide receiver. There are some other good New Jersey wide receivers out there. Are they only recruiting Jersey receivers, or are they going to, I know they're recruiting others, but can they land others, or are they just going to stay in that New Jersey footprint?
Yeah, I think they've reached their North Jersey receiver quota for the class. I think things are going to shift here. Obviously, the guys were very familiar with at this point. The names are there. It's Vernell Brown, Jamie French, Talon Taylor, and DeCorian Moore. Those are the guys. Phillip Bell still out there as well. There's a lot of guys still in play for Ohio State. This is a win over Michigan. This was a big target for Michigan. In fact, I think if you go back a few months, you would have thought it was much more likely he would end up at Michigan than Ohio State, even at one time in this recruitment. So this is a really nice pickup for them. Again, it's a top 100 player. It's like a consensus top 100 player. I think he may be a unanimous top 100 player. Actually, I think at least three of the big four have him in the top 100, and it may even be all four. So this is a big bodied player. He's 6'3". He's a red zone threat. He's a jump ball threat. He's a different type of receiver than what is left on their board. So that also makes him enticing because he's not what they're after with the rest of the guys. Jamie French, we'll give Jamie 6'1", but he's a little more slight build than Quincy. DeCorian Moore, I think we'll be generous and give him 6 feet. And Vernell Brown is a bit under 6 feet tall. So this is a different type of player. This gives them another added dimension to this receiver class that it wasn't really going to have otherwise. So I think he fits in really well with what they're also trying to get in this class. Tony, this is another situation where, yes, you have Jeremiah Smith, but I think it's good to get another big body in there in the room here moving forward.
Well, I think maybe this kind of helps ease the pain of losing TJ Moore last year, like not getting another bigger receiver to go with Jeremiah Smith. And one of the things I like about Porter is, yeah, he's 6'3", 6'4", whatever, but he can also run after the catch. He's not just a station-to-station guy. He can make people miss and then get vertical and pick up yards. So he's not a possession receiver. You see some taller receivers like this, and I don't always immediately go to like Benjamin Victor, who would take a little while to get started and to stop. And, and this guy is, I'm impressed by his quickness and his speed. And as you said, he's a red zone guy. You can go watch his huddle, and he's making a couple of one-handed catches in the back of the end zone. Just a a guy that is different than what they're going after. And I think, like you said, they need that. But we've seen before, like Heartline will put Garrett Wilson at X. Like it doesn't have to be a 6'3" guy to be at X, but it is good to have those guys that can do it and can be a tougher matchup, a more physical matchup for corners that they're facing. So I think this is a guy you get it locked in, and now you can worry about filling it out, because Dazee Jones is the slot guy, I'm assuming, in the class, or one of the slot guys that they've already got committed. So now you can maybe work on the other outside guy, or if like another slot guy, if you've got 4. If you get 4, you got to put them somewhere. So I like this pickup.
Yeah, and it certainly feels like it's going to be 4 receivers. Would they take 5? I think if the names were French, Brown, and Moore, they would take 5. I don't see them turning any of those guys away. I really don't. I think more realistically, it's probably going to end up being 4. Would be unbelievable if they got all 3 of those guys to go with the 2 they have. But I think it's going to work out where somehow, some way, it's probably going to be 2 of the 3, or potentially, if something goes sideways with, let's say DeCorey Moore and JB French go somewhere else, I could see Phillip Bell sneaking into the class as well. I mean, there's some options here. Talon Taylor, tremendous player. I think he's going to Georgia at this point. There is time for that to change. Things can evolve, but right now he almost seems like the least likely. Of
who's most likely
talking about? Yeah, least likely to end up in the class, I guess. Most likely, I don't think it's DeCorian.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably go Vernell Brown, but it's one of those things where I tend to think they're either going to get the 2 South Florida Express guys or they're not. Right now, I have them getting both. I don't think those are slam dunks. Certainly French isn't, but I also think the panic over French has been overblown. So, we'll see how this plays out. It's going to be fascinating to see how they finish with all the options they have and just Heartline's track record. So there's going to be some really good recruiting battles here at the receiver position. That kind of gets you into how does this all fit together if they can get like Brown, to me, can play outside. He's kind of like a guy that you've talked about, Heartline likes to play guys different spots. I think Vernell Brown can do that, but he's more of a slot guy. I think DeCorian Moore is the guy who can really kind of play anywhere. I think you could put DeCorian Moore in the backfield. There's a lot of things that kid can do. So they have positioned themselves in a way that I don't think they're too worried about fitting the pieces together. I think what they have and then what they're going after are very different. And so I think they'll be able to do that. I think as terms of the recruiting pitch to these guys, I think they'll be able to very easily kind of explain to everyone what the roles are and what they kind of see everyone doing at the next level.
I will say, in terms of the bigger receivers, real quick, saw Demarion Witten working out in the Woody, and he still very much looks like a wide receiver to me, a bigger wide receiver. So I think a redshirt year, we'll see where he is, but I expect him to play his 4 games. But another bigger bodied receiver that can help them out next year as well.
Yeah, and I'm fascinated to see him down the road, just because I watched him so much in high school and was so impressed with him. I'm just really intrigued to see how Ohio State's going to use him, because I think you can do a lot of different things with him as well. Especially, you can kind of use him as like a flex tight end, and you're going to get some ridiculous mismatches because linebackers are not going to be able to cover him. So there's going to be some interesting combinations I think they're going to be able to trot out there. With that said, How do you see this class, Tony? You like to prognosticate a little bit. You like to read tea leaves. Do you think they take two more? And if it's two, which two do you think they're getting? I mean, Decory Moore is still out there. Are you a Decory and Moore believer?
Well, I'll believe that one when I see it, because yeah, Ohio State's got a good track record of getting the number one receiver in the class. We've seen them do it here and there, but the Texas draw, and I'll believe that one when I see it. I know the way I viewed it was after the visit to Ohio State that everybody was feeling good about Ohio State's chances, and maybe they had pulled even with Texas. But if you pull even before the official visit to the school that you're even with, good luck staying even, is kind of how I view it. And so I'll believe, like I said, I'll believe that one when I see it. I think 4 is a good number. That's what they tried to get last year, and it didn't happen. So you want to certainly try to get that number again this year. And the way Heartline is not really interested in going to the portal, this is how you're going to have to get it done, through the recruiting. And generally they're okay with that, and they can make do. I mean, they've overcome going, over so far over on the 2022 class. Kojo Antwi is still around, but they've been able to overcome that. So, it's hard to doubt him or what he's going to put up. But yeah, where is the level in terms of, okay, say they don't get Moore, say they don't get French, say they don't get Vernell Brown. Are there two others that they would likely take to make this 4 or be able to get?
Yeah, I mean, that would be obviously the doomsday scenario. I mean, at that point, Phillip Bell becomes highly, highly, highly important. I think they've got a chance at him pretty much no matter what, but I think that would really open the floodgates there. They're still in on Dalen McCutcheon. It's another name I should have thrown out there. Mm-hmm. Here's where I think they're relatively well insulated. And, Winston Watkins, I think they could call up at some point and get back in. They're still talking to Winston Watkins. Do I think that's going to happen at this point? No. But that would be a guy that might pick up some steam as well. You might see them reconnect with Winston Watkins. But here's where they're kind of well positioned. And I would argue that maybe both teams probably feel this way. So I don't think it's just an Ohio State thing. I'm sure the other school I'm about to talk about is telling themselves this too. These kids probably aren't all going to Texas. Like Decory Moore, Jamie French, French and Vernell want to play together. Texas isn't on Vernell's list. That's a state of Florida versus Ohio State battle. But, Dalen McCutcheon, they're not all going to go to Texas. So they're going to split these guys somehow, in my opinion. I don't know how it's all going to play out exactly. My best guess right now would be Moore to Texas, French and Brown to Ohio State, probably McCutcheon to Texas. That would be that's kind of how I see things. But I think both schools probably feel good that like they're in the top 2 for a lot of these guys. And it's going to be awfully hard for one school to sweep this thing. It's going to be really hard for one school to sweep this thing. So they're both going to get somebody out of it, like a French Moore. They're both going to get someone they really like, maybe multiple someones out of the core group we've kind of talked about here. So I don't, even though LSU kind of got in there and got the visit back with Moore, I just don't see that happening. Again, I have more people telling me Texas than Oregon when it comes to like Ohio State's biggest rival here. So, until I hear differently, I think it's Ohio State, Texas for Moore. I think French is kind of a wild card. I think right now it probably is Ohio State, Texas. It could be Ohio State and one or two other schools in 2 weeks. He's been a little bit all over the place, but Ohio State's kind of been the constant there. And then we know what Vernell is doing. He's deciding between the 3 Florida schools and Ohio State. So I like where they're at to finish with really the top receiver class. Could Texas steal it? Yeah, I mean, again, if they can pull off something along the lines of getting Moore, French, McCutcheon, yeah, maybe if Ohio State can't counter, with someone like Brown and Phillip Bell or Brown and Taylor or whatever it might be. But I like Ohio State right now in the driver's seat to sign the best receiver class again. I guess my final thing is, should they go 5? Because you're on top of the numbers, Tony, in terms of the roster. And I think people have this perception of Ohio State that their receiver room is loaded, and it is at the top, but it's not a position where they've got a ton of bodies. And, we know, Ibuka's gone after the year. They didn't really hit their number last year. So they've lost a guy to the portal, a couple guys. I mean, they may lose another couple guys to the portal, or at least one guy to the portal after the season. Would you take 5?
I think if at this point, if you're not going to go to the portal and you want to hit numbers, then you have to take as many as will get to that number, provided you view them as Ohio State caliber, because it's what's worse, not getting anybody or getting somebody that isn't good enough to play at Ohio State. I would say getting somebody that's just going to not good enough to be there and is just going to occupy a scholarship. And the way we're getting so professionalized right now, you kind of want as much bang for your buck as you can. So when you look at next year's roster, assuming Jaden Ballard comes back and assuming Kojo Antwi comes back, those I think are your lone 4th and 5th year guys. And everybody else is going to be a junior or a sophomore or a freshman. You're talking, Carnell Tate next year is playing his last year. You would think, perhaps. So this is how quickly we're moving. You can't expect anybody to stay longer than 3 years, and you can't expect all of these guys to hit. So when you're saying, okay, we're going to sign a class of 4, at most 3 of those guys are going to hit, on average. And as we saw in the 2022 class, really you're still waiting for Kojo Antwi, and everybody else is transferred out. And so you're at best you're hitting 75%, and then also you're losing them after 3 years generally. Now NIL is going to help you with that, but sometimes it takes some extenuating circumstances to keep Emeka Egbuka, like an injury, like losses to Michigan, like everybody else coming back. And so that plays into it as well. You can't just expect to keep seniors, especially guys that are projected first rounder. He was coming off of an injury, so it was a little bit different there. So I think 5 is a lot, but you've got to get your numbers. And if it's like you said, if it's the right 5, like right now, if the scenario that you laid out of Moore and McCutcheon going to Texas and French and Vernell Brown going to Ohio State, do you think both of those teams would take that right now and just be done?
I would, if I were both of them. But I mean, I think I would sign up for that in a heartbeat. But, I don't think they'll stop. They will not stop recruiting Moore.
Yeah.
They will not stop recruiting French. They will not stop recruiting Brown, and they will not stop recruiting Taylor. So unless somehow 3 of those 4 are already committed, then they might tell the 6th guy, hey, sorry, but I really think the number would be 5 at that point if they can get 3 of those 4 guys. Now the question is, do you make it 5 no matter what? Maybe it's a little strong, but like if you get 2 of those guys, do you try and take Phillip Bell as like your 5th? I would do that, because here's the thing with Heartline's recruiting. He wants to take 3 every year. I think he already knows that's just not realistic. Because the way when you recruit at the level he recruits at, you have 2 things. You lose guys to the portal because you're recruiting a whole bunch of 5 stars and top 100 players that expect to play, and you can't possibly play every single kid as a true freshman and give them real time. So you are naturally going to lose to the portal. And you're not going to have a lot of 4 and 5 year guys because the guys you don't lose to the portal, a lot of those guys are going to be 3 and done. I think Carnell Tate is in position to be a 3 and done. I don't think anyone has any delusions that Jeremiah Smith's going to be here more than 3 years. So you're going to need to replenish things. And like you've mentioned, he doesn't like going to the portal. And I understand that. I understand why he doesn't like going to the portal. So we'll see. 26, looking a little bit further ahead, is kind of in a good place for them as far as like the state of Ohio. They've got a couple guys within, and I include Chris Henry in this. Mm-hmm. They've got some Ohio guys that can kind of fill out the class. And Chris Henry's probably not going to be as patient as your typical Ohio guy. But, if you take someone like Jaden Ricketts, who they offered, Jaden Ricketts might be okay with like coming in and redshirting or not seeing a bunch of time right away. So you may be able to piece things together a little better in terms of spacing out in 26, where you're not necessarily bringing in 4 5-star guys who all want to play right away. So with some Ohio flavor in 26, I think it's possible you could maybe avoid that. But yeah, I would push this to 5 if I could. We'll see if they do. Again, I still think it's probably going to be 4 for them. That's what I think. But if I were making decisions, I would strongly consider 5.
Yeah, and if you've got your 4, and then DeCorian Moore says, hey, I'd like to come aboard, you don't even worry about the numbers at that point. You just make it happen.
Yep, absolutely. So another big pickup for Ohio State. This is not the last big offensive pickup I'm expecting here in the next few days. If you've been on the board, you probably know who I'm referring to. If not, then get on the board. Our 40% off annual subscription sale is getting cut off on Monday. I'm letting it run through Father's Day, and I'm gonna cut that off on Monday evening. So you have a few more days to get in there at 40% off and read up on who we think could be next now that Quincy Porter has jumped in. And we'll have plenty of stuff coming out of the weekend as well. Another big weekend of official visitors. So look for more stuff on that. I've got a Justin Hill interview coming as he's halfway through his official visits with a decision date coming up in a couple weeks. So we'll have that on the site. Tony will continue to have his team coverage on the site as we prep for maybe the most anticipated Ohio State football season in quite a while. So make sure you're on BuckeyeHuddle.com. Make sure if you're watching this, you hit the subscribe button, subscribe to the channel. And we appreciate everyone's support, and we will talk to you again soon.